Oh, absolutely outstanding. Good morning, and welcome to the Daily Huddle on Tuesdays. I am one of the Tuesday hosts. My name is Tara Heaton, and my specialty is communication. And we talk on Tuesdays about communication and relationships. And we do that because we believe that more effective communication builds better relationships. And better relationships, richer, more quality, deeper, more trusted relationships are the very essence of what it is to be human. So, important things this morning. And we're taking a little shift from my typical talk to the brain tips this morning. We're not going to talk about presentations or storytelling. We're going to talk about the emotions particularly tied to mothers in light of the fact that Mother's Day is this Sunday. And as many of you know, I wrote a book, and it really is around the emotions of a mother. And while my journey as a mother is very unique to me and my children and my ex-husband and my current husband, um, I believe that the emotions that I feel and face during this journey, and as a woman today, as a mother of three adult children, I believe that these emotions are truly universal. So that's what we're going to dig into. And I've organized them a little bit this morning into 6 emotions. And they are these: love, freedom, and joy, shame, fear, and grief. So the first 3 sound juicy and fun, right? Love, freedom, and joy. And then we sort of plummet into shame, fear, and grief. And I think that we try to avoid or eliminate or get rid of shame, fear, and grief. And what we're going to talk about today is that those are part of the reasons. They are really the catalyst to our ability to love and to have freedom and to feel joy. I will go so far as to say that only love can drive away shame. And I learned that from Lee Owens, one of our other co-hosts. So think about that just for a minute. Love can quiet shame. Freedom is born of fear. So without fear, I say there would be no freedom. And I truly believe, above all else, that joy is derived from grief. And without grief, would we truly have the capacity for joy? So it is only from suffering that we can experience these emotions. So I'm going to give some personal examples. And what I hope that you will take with you today is, especially as mothers and leading into the celebration of motherhood this weekend, that all of these emotions have power and that we can leverage them for a better experience of life. And that feeling grief and fear, they are part of our wholeness. And I really believe that the first step towards having more joy and accepting more love in our lives is to accept the grief and to accept the shame that we all at times feel. I'll tell y'all, as I tend to do, a funny story. I used to run a small business in Athens, Georgia, and I had some full-time folks and I had some part-time folks that would come with me into high schools to take orders. And I had just hired a new person. I'd only talked to her a few times, and showed up for work one day, and we were just chatting before the bell rang and we got to work, just getting to know each other. And her name is Debbie. And I said, Debbie, do you have children? And she said, yes. I said, oh, really? Tell me about them. And she said, I have 5 children. And I said, whoa. I said, you must really love kids. And Debbie said, not really. And I share that story because I think from that very moment, um, we're still connected by our heartstrings today because children bring out so much more than just love from us. I think that love pretty much drives all that we do. And so many times, as mothers, we talk about getting it right and getting it wrong. So let's think about that in just a little bit of different terms. Anything that we decide to do as a parent, not just a mother, but as a parent, rather than saying, is it the right choice or is it the wrong choice? How about this? every decision that we make has positive effects on the experience of our children, and it could have negative effects. Probably one of the most powerful examples of this, and I'm not going to read this to you, but in the very beginning of my book, I talk about how my father humiliated me and shamed me to get me to dive off of a diving board when I was 9 years old. Now, that was hurtful and it felt cruel. And it also is part of the reason why those behaviors are part of the reason why I'm such a fighter today. So did my dad get it wrong? Maybe. And it had some negative effects on me? Yes. And it had positive effects. And that's where, as we grow and evolve as humans, as parents, as adults, we can see that the choices that we make, they are going to have positive and negative effects on us. So let's talk specifically about the emotions that I've brought up today. And this is where I'm going to read a few excerpts and share with you all, and then we're going to talk about this. And I'm going to take you to the very beginning of my book. And many of you know this story, but my daughter was 12, Caroline. Most of you know this, and she got a virus. And when she was in a coma, when she was still in the coma, this is early on in the book, my husband convinced me to go outside and take a break. So let me share. I have this marked now. As I walked outside of the ICU, wearing my ankle-length brown wool coat with the shimmery black lapels, I head outside. Standing in the icy wind, I glance to the ground and think how stupid I must look in aqua blue Nikes and this elegant coat. Reaching into the pocket, I pull out my best friend, a half-full box of Marlboro Lights and the mini pink lighter. A split second of pleasure teases me as I pull one slender cigarette from the box. I light the end, take a deep drag in, exhale, and let the security of the cigarette comfort me. The cold against my face feels like a punishment I somehow deserve. It tells me to suffer as if in solidarity with my child. That little excerpt takes me to this. How many times have you heard someone say, "We are only as happy as our saddest child"? Whenever I say this, whether I'm doing a workshop or speaking or reading, the minute I say this, all the moms start nodding their heads like, damn right, that's just how it is. Well, I'm going to say, hell no. Absolutely not. I ask you this, if we feel like it is our responsibility to suffer along with our children every minute of every day, think about my friend Debbie and her 5 children. Somebody's going to be always suffering, right? But if we put the responsibility of our happiness on our children, what a burden that is for them to bear, number one. Think about that. I cannot be happy, Wilson, Caroline, Holly, unless you are just living the dream. That is an enormous amount of pressure on a child. It is not their responsibility for us to have joy. Do we cry when they're hurting? Absolutely. But that cannot define us as to who we are. So think about the pressure that may put on our children. And then think about taking your own joy back, taking responsibility for your joy and being able to separate those two. Secondly, is that what you want to teach your children? Because I'll tell you what I've learned. Our children are watching us much more closely than they're listening to us. They don't hear much at all of what we say, but they are watching us. And are we going to teach our children that you must suffer in solidarity with the people that you love until the end of time? I think that only contributes to the suffering. So that's one thing I want you to consider as we think about shame as it relates to being a parent. All right, speaking of shame, we're going to talk about something else that I think many of us were taught to do. And just make sure I got these little babies correctly in the right place. Let's see here. Many of us And I kind of lost this little excerpt, but I'm going to just tell it to y'all. Anyway, many of us were brought up to say this, and I remember saying this so many times, especially to Holly, that things could be so much worse in life. Like, don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't be a victim. Look around you. People have it so much worse. Again, I think there's a term for that. I've heard it called comparative suffering. I think that's a Brene Brown term. And that's another one of those, what I say is BS. That's a myth. I say that to people and I see them nodding their heads like, oh, yes, we should be so grateful. Everything could be so much worse. While that is true, our pain and our hurt is real. And when we first accept that we are hurting, that is the beginning of healing. And I don't even really like to reference the term healing because that feels finite. I like to reference the term growth, that we are growing stronger from this realization. Just because other parents had a worse journey than I did does not mean that my heartache, where my children are concerned, is not real. But okay, moms, now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. And I'm still working on this today, and I think it's going to be a big theme in my next book. I finally accepted this, that yes, of course I'm suffering because my children have gone through hurt and heartache. Who would I be if I were not suffering? But here's where I still don't give myself permission to hurt. And this is where we're going to talk about grief. Not only do I grieve for the lives that I hoped my children would lead, particularly Caroline because of her brain injury. But did I want my son to spend years behind bars? But those are extreme examples. I think if we look at especially adult children, we can all say that's not what I wanted for them. I wanted them to have more peace, more fulfillment, a better relationship, less financial worries. All of those concerns hurt. And as long as that hurt is part of our children's lives, I don't know about you, but I've learned to feel justified in accepting that hurt. But here's where I have growing to do. If I grieve the fact that I'll never have that empty nest freedom that I dreamed I would have one day, or if I am grieving the fact that I'm going to be forever tied to a special needs child, if I feel sorry for myself for just a moment, that's where I go back into that shame piece. Like, I'm feeling sorry for myself, and that's not okay. Yes, I am grieving the life that I dreamed I might have. And there are beautiful, glorious layers of gifts in my life. Both of those things are equally true. So while I give myself permission to hurt for my children, I'm still working on giving myself permission to just simply hurt for Tara. But I think that is where I want to grow. And I want to celebrate that in mothers today. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about this topic of grief. Let me see here. So I think another thing that mothers tend to do is we tend to compare ourselves. And damn, I'm still doing that today as a mother. I still think that Caroline would be better off if she had had a mother like my friend Holly Mims, the eternal caregiver. But sometimes when I'm on my game, I remind myself of this. So I'm going to read a little excerpt about the years when Caroline was really struggling. And there were two women in her life, a caregiver named Michelle and a tutor named Linda. And I am very much not like either one of these women. So I come home from work one day and Michelle, the caregiver, is emptying the dishwasher. She is a carefree college girl who believes that as long as she can pay her bills and pass her classes, she is in Athens, Georgia to meet guys, celebrate friendships, and drink craft beer. Her long, graceful fingers are cradling a stack of plates as she greets me with her breezy smile and sun-kissed hair that dances long past her shoulders. She comes to our home and lights it up with her charm and banter. I want to bottle her essence and diffuse it about our house like a sunshine fairy. And then there's the tutor, Miss Linda. She sits erect, yet at ease beside her student. She has thick, jet black, curly hair that glistens like brand new patent leather Mary Jane's. Her eyes pour love through the royal blue readers perched on her nose. She was going to retire from teaching, but then decided that being a part-time tutor would be rewarding. I wonder if she feels rewarded right now. I bet she does. While Caroline makes it clear they've been focused on these words for far too long, Miss Linda looks refreshed. With the words now covered, she says sweetly, "Origin." And she waits. She is completely devoted to these 4 words. I cannot even begin to grasp the patience that this woman possesses. So this passage goes on, and toward the end of the chapter, here's where the growth comes in. I'm thinking about this, and as I walk back downstairs and ask Michelle about her weekend plans before she leaves, she says it's nothing much, a fraternity party, a mud run, and something about a hookah lounge. Shortly after she and Ms. Linda drive away, I feel a familiar twinge. I feel envious of Linda's patience and Michelle's carefree spirit. But as I imagine embracing the gifts of 2 other women, I realize that's not me. That's not how I am built. I am more fuel and fire. This makes me not envious, but grateful for the calm, billowy energy that Linda and Michelle bring into our lives. I will leave that to them while I trust in my energy to keep fighting for Caroline. So I share that again to focus on mothers and how we tend to compare what we have to give to other mothers. What we have to give our children is exactly what they need. And we need a community. We need to be together so that people that do have more patience and more of a carefree spirit can be in the lives of my children. I cannot be everything to them. I have my traits and my gifts, and so do you, Mary, and you, Trish, and Lauren, and Maria. We all have different gifts. So I want to encourage us to invite these women with different energies and different gifts and traits into the lives and into our homes so that our children are not only learning to do things the way that we do it. I will say that that is one of my regrets because my adult children, particularly my youngest daughter, Holly, who is female, she has a tendency to compare herself to me. And in many ways, we are very much alike. And in many ways, we are very different. And I want her to celebrate her differences, not aspire to emulate me, which brings me to one more reading and one more topic. I believe that many times we equate, well, I've got several little topics, but I'm just going to do one more reading because we're getting short on time. Many times, especially as mothers, we equate worrying with love. And that's where this fear comes in. And as long as we are worrying and we're fearful, we cannot truly, fully love. I believe that. So we wrap ourselves up in worrying about things, as the old saying goes, over which we have no control. This takes intention. But I know this, worrying is a barrier to living. As long as we believe that we have something to worry about, we are not freeing ourselves to live and love with all our might to our greatest capacity. So here's how I have worked with worry. Fortunately, my mother was a big worrier, like super worrier. She was the superhuman warrior. So was my first husband's mother. And so there was a part of me, fortunately, that rebelled against that. Like I would watch them and think, damn, that is just no way to live. However, it's not that simple. I had a therapist say to me one time, stop it. That is not a good strategy to learn to stop worrying, but I do have a little strategy and I will share it with you now. It is this: if we are worrying because we know that we need to make a decision, I encourage you to make a decision and act on it, because it is through those actions that we keep hope alive. Without action, hope is just a fairy tale. It's just a dream. So if we're worrying about something over which we do have control, here's what I do. I give myself a deadline. And I'm going to just let myself just kind of be bitchy and stew on this for 24, 48 hours. I'm going to make some notes. I'm going to give it some thought. And then whether I'm making the best decision or not, I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to act on it. And quite honestly, that has driven a 20-year journey of trying to heal the brain of my daughter. I think, I act. What are we risking? What do we have to lose? What do we have to gain? I make a decision and I move. But the things that I'm worrying about over which I have no control, like right now, I believe my adult son, who is 35 years old, I am concerned about his career path because the enormous amount of stress and hours it brings. I can't do a damn thing about that. Absolutely nothing. It worries me when I allow myself to worry about it. So we will have a rich conversation about it. And then I work very hard to let that be his journey. And do you know what he said to me recently? He said, Mom, I am where I am today because of my own actions. And it's only my actions that are going to take me from this place of stress, for example. And I thought, damn, he's right. There is nothing I can do about it. And some of you have younger children, I know, and the worries are very, very different. But let me tell you what, the worrying will never leave you unless you decide to let it leave you. Just because they're out of your house, talk about worry. I see some moms who have this Life 360 thing on their phone. Please don't do that. Please don't turn that on unless you truly don't know where your child is. Live your life, model to your children a sense of freedom. Okay, I'm going to give y'all just one little, I'm missing some that we just didn't get to, but I'm going to give y'all one more and then see what you might think. So this is just a little kind of final message about what we're talking about how joy and love and freedom, they come from fear and shame and grief. So this is kind of toward the end of the book. And I make this comment. I used to believe that I didn't deserve anything that resembled happiness unless it was in pursuit of fighting for or delivering happiness to one of my children. But now I see that freedom and joy are not to be earned. They are right there within my grasp, right between the work and the heartache. Think about that for just a minute. This Sunday is Mother's Day. I spent last weekend with Holly. I got to see Wilson this week. This Sunday, I will be with Caroline. And I put a note out to some of my neighbors thinking, well, they probably have plans, but just in case they don't, let's have a cookout. Y'all, I think it's right now at about 30 people that are coming to my house on Sunday. And I bring this up because here is the new Tara. Will I be running around fixing perfect candles and flowers and all the perfect lighting? That's a hell no. You know what we're going to have? We're going to have food. We're making one dish and everybody else is bringing a dish. We're going to have music. We're going to have a fire and we're going to have laughter and dancing, and everything else I am not worrying about, because we don't connect as humans and as mothers over perfection. That's not how we connect. We connect because we all face challenges. That's what unites us. And this Sunday, I'm going to celebrate that journey with friends of all colors, races, genders, and preferences, with music, laughter, and food and dancing. Now, I might be the only one dancing, but there will be dancing. So that I went a little bit long, but if you all have any questions or thoughts or comments, I would love to hear from you.
Tara, first of all, I think that was wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it really made me think about, not putting that kind of pressure on your child, you know, um, to make you happy, that your concern is that they be happy. That is a lot of pressure. I never really thought about it that way before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that, Stan. My children are happy and they're sad and they're mad and they're stressed, and that is life,
And
right?
that's life. That's life. That's right.
Yes, yes, yes. Good morning, Gio. Your hand's up, but you're on mute. So maybe you're just waving at me because I'm so passionate this morning. Good morning.
And good morning. No, I love it. What um what I really appreciated about this conversation, for me, it was navigating through the spaces of worrying and forgiveness. And the way I heard it was in the context of, and I quite never quite danced with it that way before, which is in the space of forgiving life. Like life is life. And you said something that was very profound, which was there's no power in comparing. There's no power in comparing sufferings. Yet my suffering is real. And I think that not absent, but I think inside of this conversation, I discovered for myself that a lot of my worrying, a lot of my concerns have something to do with some kind of incompleteness or some kind of resentment about how things were, how things happened, how I wanted things to happen. And in this conversation, I'm discovering, and also how in my need to be concerned to fulfill some emotional balance, I also put a real pressure on others. And in this case, in my children, like, oh wow, what a pressure I put on them. If they're not happy, then I'm not happy. That's a that's a crazy thing to put on someone. So I'm getting all of that, and I wanted to say I'm saying it all wrong, but I'm just discovering from the conversation. I'm just sharing what I discovered from the conversation.
Okay. I love that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anything else come up for y'all? I did have something funny I wanted to read to you, but I don't know where I put it. So next time, next time. Um, I want to just remind you before I close us out about what I said from the beginning, that we were talking about freedom and joy and love. We're talking about shame and fear and grief. Do not try to drive those out of your life. Those negative emotions, they are part of what makes us whole. And the moment that we accept those, that's where the growth begins. I want to encourage you to not so much seek healing as to seek growth. Be more in line with your values as years go by. Some days we'll get it wrong. Some days we'll really screw it up. And some days we'll nail it. And some days we'll have both. At the end of every day, I usually can see that today hurt and today was a win. And that's pretty much every day. So I want to not only give yourself some grace, but I want you to celebrate all the emotions that are alive within you. And I'm going to close us out right on time with the tenets of the daily huddle. And the first of those is love. I used to just not like this saying, but I'm going to say it today because I'm trying to grow. Love starts with yourself. Learn to love yourself. And then once you love yourself, you have something that you can give away. You cannot give away what you do not possess. Love yourself, mamas and daddies. And remember to laugh. Do not take life so seriously. Laughter is healing. Throw your head back. Those endorphins will give you great energy. And remember to give, not just from your purse strings, but with your time and with your heart. Give your vulnerability. It will come back to you with beautiful relationships that power up your life. And take care of your stress. How do we do that? Drink a lot of water. Eat mostly plants. Get your sleep and make sure that you get off that butt and move that body. So I want to say happiest of Mother's Day to all of you, to the mothers in your lives, and particularly to the celebration of the woman that you are.